Hello, very good evening. It's 8:03 here on LBC. I'm Iain Dale. Well, as you know, every Tuesday and Thursday during the election campaign, we are interviewing and conducting a phone-in with a leading member of all of the different parties. Well, tonight it is the turn of the Brexit Party. Ann Widdecombe joins us, Brexit Party MEP, parliamentary candidate, former Conservative Minister and Shadow Home Secretary. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
How are you enjoying fighting in the seat that you first stood in? When was it?
1983.
Well, there you go.
When David Owen, some listeners may remember David Owen, he was the MP, and it was a very exciting election then because it was the first time that he was standing as the leader of what was then the SDP, which became the SDP Liberal Alliance and then just became the Liberal Democrats.
And how has your style of campaigning changed? Because you do quite like the normal sort of doorstep campaigning and the old style political campaign.
Oh, it hasn't changed much at all. I mean, yes, we do things like events in the city centre and that sort of stuff. But I do like campaigning. I do like knocking on doors. I do like meeting people in the streets. But of course, we do one or two showman-like things as well, because in this day and age, you have to. What is, of course, completely new to me in campaigning terms, because I never had to do it while I was in Parliament, is the advent of social media. And I said right at the start, I said, look, I won't be any good at this. I just need to find somebody who will put my views out there. And that's what I did.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the fact that, I mean, you have become one of the faces of the Brexit Party. Everyone knows you as a Conservative, and yet you decided to join Nigel Farage back in the spring, and you stood for election to the European Parliament. You are now an MEP. And you're kind of his warm-up act, aren't you, at all of these rallies that you do?
I'm one of his warm-up acts. The chairman, Richard Tice, is another. I'm certainly one of the warm-up acts, yes, and I enjoy it tremendously. I used to enjoy speaking at Conservative Party conference, and the Conservative Party never quite used that, but the Brexit Party uses it and extracts all it can from it.
Because I've never thought of you as particularly Eurosceptic. When we used to do our theatre shows together, you always said on stage that you could never support leaving the EU until somebody told you what it would be like, like afterwards, after we left. And yet no one really has ever been able to explain that, have they?
Well, I don't think that's quite right. That was my position. My position was always I was Eurosceptic. I became Eurosceptic during my time as a minister, when I realised firsthand, absolutely firsthand, just how much interference there was in making our own laws, how we couldn't make any law that was incompatible with EU law, how we had to make law, which the EU dictated. And so in those nearly 7 years that I was a minister, I became more and more Eurosceptic. But, as you rightly say, I always said, look, hang on, I know what I want to run away from. What I want to know is what I'm running to. And that was my position as late as March of this year, when I was toying with joining the Brexit Party. And I was saying, well, look, just tell me what's going to happen. I don't want a Norwegian-style deal. I don't want to be half in, half out. I want to be out. And gradually I was convinced that it really was possible to set something up that would work.
But has it worked? Because
we haven't got out yet.
Well, no, indeed. But Nigel Farage has stood down more than half your candidates throughout the country. And if you look at the polls, it's actually shattered the Brexit Party.
Well, what I was saying to you was something that would work. I meant if we left the EU, that there would be something to go to, not just something to go from. And I was saying that was what I'd become convinced of. I think Nigel was right. It was a very, very difficult decision to take. I think it was a very finely balanced judgment. But I think he was right to make that offer to the Tory party and to stand down in seats which they already hold. But what I do think was totally wrong, stubborn and full of a sense of entitlement was that the Tory party wouldn't reciprocate even in a very limited way. We, for example, and everybody...
They called his bluff, didn't they?
Listen, we've said, for example, and everybody listening to this programme should hear this, that we would stand down in all the marginals. That would include my seat, for example, in all the marginals, in exchange for a few seats that the Tories haven't won in 100 years, where there were Labour, Remain MPs in big Leave voting seats. That's all we asked for. They wouldn't give it to us. Now they're moaning that we may split the vote in the marginals. Well, whose fault is that?
But the thing is, Nigel Farage asked Boris Johnson a question to which he knew the answer. Boris Johnson could never have said yes to that, could he?
Or which question are you posing now?
Well, about what standing aside for Brexit Party candidates in some seats.
In seats that the Tory party have never won in 100 years, where you've got Labour MPs who are consistently remain in the teeth of huge Leave votes in their constituencies. Tories couldn't do anything in those seats. We could. And that was what we suggested to them. Now, they turned it down. All I've said is, fine, they turned it down. But now, don't turn around and blame us for splitting the vote. They were offered a very good bargain.
But the fact still remains that the Brexit Party is hardly registering now in the opinion polls. It's sort of 2, 3, 4, 5% at the most. And it also means you're not going to get as much coverage because you're not standing in as many seats as even the Green
Party. No, we won't get as much coverage. I mean, that is quite true. But the coverage we do get, we will make the most use of. But when you're talking about the polls, of course, those are national polls. We know that in some seats, and we've never said, we're going to exactly form a majority in Parliament. We haven't said that. But that in some seats, we're actually doing very well. And what I believe is that it's possible for us to hold the balance of power. After all, the UDP did it with only 10 seats. And what will we do? We'll make sure Boris delivers on the things he said. No extension beyond 2020. Yeah, I've heard him make promises before, Ian. We'll hold him to those promises.
How will you do so? Because after these elections, the Brexit Party is effectively finished as an electoral force.
You weren't listening to what I said. I'll say it again. I'll spell it out very simply. Well, sometimes you do. Actually, I saw you get distracted. What I said was that it is possible that we will hold enough seats for the balance of power. And then I pointed out that doesn't actually require anything too ambitious because the UDP have done it with 10 seats.
DUP.
And if so, sorry, what did I say?
You said UDP.
Oh, sorry about that, DUP. And so...
1-1.
And so, therefore, we will, in that situation, make sure that Boris delivers on his promises.
In terms of that December 2020 date, I would agree with you that I think it's entirely likely that will be postponed, maybe even a couple of times.
But he's promised.
Well, I know he's promised a number of things.
Yeah, you've said it.
Indeed. But I still don't see how you as a party are going to have any influence on that because you're not, you're
just going to spell it again.
You're not going to get MPs, are you? You might.
Yes, I believe we can.
Where?
You see, you're not listening to me.
I am listening to you.
What I said to you was, and you've obviously already forgotten it, that whatever the national polls may be saying, in some of our seats, we appear to be doing extremely well. Now, that's all I'm saying.
Which ones are you going to win?
No. Big Labour Leave seats.
Which ones?
I'm not going to sit here and read you out a long list of seats.
Hartlepool?
But what I do believe will happen is that some of that polling will eventually become public. And then you will know the answer to that. And before you also ask me, as you're almost certain to, about our policies, you're going to have to wait till tomorrow when we issue our contract with the people.
Well, Boris can leak his own manifesto, so why can't you?
Because I don't operate in quite the same way that Boris operates. And was it a leak?
That is true in so many ways.
Was it a leak, Ian? Was it an accidental leak?
I think it was.
Or was it a very well-planned leak?
My suspicion is it was a cock-up because it's usually cock-up rather than conspiracy. Right, now you were telephoned by people offering sort of baubles to persuade you to stand down in your seat. How did those conversations start and how did they go?
Right, well, first of all, if one's talking about conversations, I was only offered anything in one conversation. Okay. I had several conversations with people who rang me up to try and persuade me not to stand, trying to say it was my moral responsibility if the vote split. And I said, no, it was Boris's moral responsibility because he'd turned down the offer that we made. And I had several of those. And I think a lot of those were just on private initiatives, old friends, etc. Then I did have a call from number 10. And we had a conversation in which it was the same sort of moral pressure. It was all going to be my fault if the Tory lost. And I said, no, it will all be the Tories' fault if I lost, and all that sort of stuff went on. And then we got cut off. But in the second part of the conversation...
Obviously the Russians.
I doubt it. I think it was the wilds of the British countryside. But in the second part of the conversation, then, on that one occasion, I've never said it's happened multiple times, on that one occasion, the statement was that if I were to stand down, I would be given, and I quote, a role in the negotiations. I quote.
What kind of role?
Well, you may well ask. I don't know. And for that
did you
matter,
not
the
ask?
negotiations weren't special. Of course I didn't. I said no. I said no.
Who was the phone call with?
Ah, come on. You know I won't tell you that.
Well, why not?
No, I'm not telling you that. I'm sorry, Ian. I'm not telling you that. Period.
What kind of person?
I'm not telling you that either.
Well,
period.
I mean, if it was a junior researcher in the Number 10 policy
No, it
unit,
wasn't.
that's different
No, it
compared to maybe, dare I mention a name, Sir Eddie Lister or Dominic Cummings.
It was neither of those two, but you are not going to go through a whole list of everybody.
Well, I'm just interested into why you're so reluctant, because
No, I won't
Nigel
do it.
hasn't mentioned
No.
names
No.
either, and I don't understand why.
Because I don't want to get into that sort of an exchange. I mean, I have my reasons, but
Well, what are they?
I've just said I don't want to get into that sort of exchange for reasons which I have.
But if you don't say who these people are, the Conservatives can say, well, she's not telling the truth.
Well, they
these
can say-
conversations haven't happened.
Conservatives.
If she can't tell us who it is,
they know who it is. Conservatives can say what they like, Ian. I don't care what they say.
So you weren't promised a peerage then?
I know the truth. I know what happened. I would not say straightforwardly that I could take an oath on it if I couldn't. That, I'm afraid, has to suffice. And if you want to waste any more time trying to get me to say what I'm not going to say, carry on, Ian.
Are you? One more question on this.
Well, you can try.
Are you keeping quiet on the names because you think that an offence might have been committed?
That is not my reason for being discreet.
Okay. Well, I still don't understand.
No, I know you don't.
I don't think our
promise
listeners
to
will.
enlighten you.
Well,
I
I
don't
think
promise to
our
enlighten
listeners will think, well, this is all rather odd. She's
Well,
made the
then they must-
allegation. Why bring it into the public domain if you aren't willing to back up what you're saying?
Well, one of the reasons I brought it into the public domain was because, they had been denying that they'd offered anybody anything. And I thought, hang on. I know for an absolute solid fact that is not so.
And how many other Brexit Party candidates were offered such
I really
baubles?
have no idea. Do you know, I know this is a great surprise to you. We do have other things to discuss when we meet.
Like what?
Oh, policy, how it's going, who's going to do what.
But why do you
in the
need
campaign.
policy? You've got one policy of getting out of the EU as quickly as possible without a deal.
And you know that's not true. There's already been other policy announcements, and tomorrow there'll be the full range.
In terms of the way that Boris Johnson has conducted the negotiations, the last time we talked on the phone on air, you were saying how terrible Boris's deal was. Why do you think that most, if not all, members of the European Research Group, who are effectively similar to your views on Brexit, why have they been won over to it?
Well, it's a very good question that only they can answer. Because what I do know is, and Boris has improved things by saying, whether he'll do it, I don't know, but saying that he won't extend beyond 2020. I mean, that, for example, is a very good thing for fishing, which is in limbo. He has said that. And he has said, that he'll try and go for a simple trade deal, etc. I mean, he has improved it by what he has said. But if you actually look at the text of the deal, he's able to extend it way, way, way beyond 2020. We have to use our best endeavours to ensure some sort of parity when we're making deals. There are all sorts of things in there, and the supremacy of the ECJ, which are still even now worrying.
But you've always been a pragmatist. You on some issues you are a bit ideological, but on most issues, throughout your career, there's a lot of evidence that you've been pragmatic. Do you not think that 70% out is better than 0% out, and there's still a risk of it being 0% out?
No, you see, I don't think that there is a risk of it being 0% out, but I would agree with your first statement, which is 70% out is better than not out at all. I'm not sure that this is, in the longer term, 70% out. Yes, I am a pragmatist. I mean, you're quite correct. Politics is the art of the possible,
Exactly.
not the art always of the desirable. But I believe it is possible to leave in a clean break, or possible to leave at the end of 2020, as Boris wants to do. I believe that is possible.
But if that deal had already gone through, either Theresa May's version or Boris Johnson's version, which you don't think there's much difference between them, we'll park that one for one moment. But we're in the middle of a general election. The Labour Party policy is...
Do you know what it is?
Well, it is. I mean, clearly most of the Labour Party want to remain. I mean, it's quite clear that most of them do. Well, the Labour Party policy is that they're going to negotiate a better deal
and then vote against
it in a referendum to remain. But that's why. And I mean, we can all have our views on whether Labour's likely to win the election. But if there's another hung parliament, I would still say to you that there is a risk that we don't leave, and it will be down to the ERG back in March, and it will be down to many people in Parliament, mainly Remainer MPs in October, when they wouldn't vote for the programme motion, that we haven't left. And yet you're basically agreeing with them, and you're risking not leaving.
No, I don't believe that I am risking not leaving. I think the degree of public anger would be huge if after all of this, and now an election to boot, if after all of that, Parliament turned around and said, sorry, we're still not leaving. I mean, one of the reasons that the Brexit Party generated such support and did as well as it did in May was because it has expressed that frustration. I mean, I, in all normal circumstances, would never have even dreamed, would never even had in my worst nightmare a scenario whereby I left the Conservative Party. But it's been a mess, and that mess has now got to be thoroughly sorted. And you won't sort it by another referendum or more years of dither or trying to stay after all. You've got to sort it. Boris knows that.
What do you say to Dominic Grieve, David Gauke, people who say the Conservative Party is now the Brexit Party, and yet you've left the Conservative Party for the Brexit Party?
Well, I don't think they're a proper Brexit Party. They're certainly a darn sight nearer it than either the Labour or the Liberals will ever be.
You had a controversial start in the European Parliament. You took part in that stunt where you turned your back
Yes, I did.
on the EU anthem. And then you likened the UK's departure from the EU to the emancipation of slaves in your maiden speech. Now, that got a lot of adverse comment. Do you still stand by those comments?
Yes, I do. Because what I actually said, Ian, and everybody knows, anybody who can even analyse an argument can understand this, I said there's been a pattern throughout history, and I do actually want to finish this in 2 sentences. There's been a pattern throughout history whereby the oppressed turn on oppressors, peasants against feudal barons. Was I calling us peasants? I also said colonies against empires, and actually that probably comes closest to how I think of it, and slaves against their owners. Now, everybody's picked on the slavery, forgot the other two, picked on the slavery and said, oh, you're talking about Caribbean slavery. I said, well, what about the Spartacus revolt? It is just straightforwardly an analogy. That's all it was. And yes, I stand by it. And perhaps I could quote one that I don't often quote, Tony Benn, who actually said, when he arrived in the EU Parliament, I felt like a slave arriving at the gates of Rome.
Do you think that, do you understand why people got so offended by that, or do you think people tend to just look for things to be offended by?
Well, I think there's a certain amount of looking, but I also think there are certain trigger words, of which slavery has now obviously joined the growing list of trigger words, which causes people immediately to believe that it's moral for them to take offence. Now, I have no time for that sort of nonsense at all. I know what I was saying, and if people can't understand that, then maybe they should go back to school.
A lot of people have been tweeting today. You're not on Twitter, which is probably a good thing in some ways. A lot of people have been tweeting, how can I, as a gay man, interview you, who they regard as bigoted against gay people?
Well, can I suggest you answer that? Because if they want to know how you, a gay man, can do it, then it is for you to answer it.
But why do you think you have got this reputation of being so anti-gay?
Because any time that I say anything at all, it is distorted and twisted, as the most recent example was, and I'm not going to go through it again. It is distorted and twisted into meaning something that I have never said. And I go further. You know that I have lots of gay friends. I go further. If I thought half of what social media claims I thought, you and all my other gay friends wouldn't want anything to do with me, would you?
No.
Would you? Exactly. But somehow you do.
Somehow I do. How
long have we been friends?
Must be 20 years.
20 years.
How have your views on gay issues changed in those 20 years?
No, they haven't.
Not at all?
No.
So I mean, the world hasn't ended since the advent of equal marriage, for example.
The world hasn't ended, no. But I still believe in traditional marriage. Now, that is the teaching of the Catholic Church. I'm a Catholic. I could get all uptight and say, oh, it's religious discrimination. I don't. But equally, I'm not going to get into this now because I know that anything I say will be taken down, twisted out of all recognition and then used in evidence against me. So, end of. End of.
So you're not actually going to talk about those issues ever again, is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that I am not going into it. It has nothing to do with the Brexit Party. You've interviewed me as a member of the Brexit Party. If you want to give me a private interview with Ann Widdecombe sometime, please let me know. But you've introduced me as a leading light in the Brexit Party, and it is on that basis that I am doing this interview. And those who are watching this interview will now see me rolling my eyes.
I am sure that the Brexit Party will have a policy on these issues in its manifesto tomorrow.
I doubt it very much because all those things have been done that you've talked about, so I see no reason why they should have a policy on it.
If you had a chance to vote to reverse it, would you?
No, of course not. That would be daft. Can you imagine the legal muddle that would actually eventuate
but you see,
that?
that's interesting, that I wasn't necessarily expecting you to say that.
What were you expecting me to say?
Well, probably that you would reverse it.
Oh, come on. Think of the legal muddle. Think of the legal muddle. And what happens if 5 years down the line it was re-reversed? I mean, come on, guys, be realistic. Call me pragmatic just now. Be pragmatic.
No, on some things you can be pragmatic. On other issues you can be very ideological. And because you are... Look, and I get it. I do understand that people who have devout religious beliefs find this an incredibly difficult issue. And they are guided by their religion. And I respect that. A lot of people don't, but I do. As you know, I'm not a religious person. But
Shall we progress to the general election and the Brexit Party?
Should we go to some calls?
Let's go to some calls.
Do you want to put your headphones on?
Oh, yeah. Might be an idea. Might hear them that way.
David is in Enfield. Hello, David.
Good evening.
Hi.
Good evening.
Good evening. Do you think it's appropriate that the US president should be getting involved in our election? And why I say this is because if you remember a couple of weeks ago, the leader of your party was hosting his nightly show, and Donald Trump surprisingly called in and basically encouraged Nigel to make a deal with Boris to ensure there was a hard Brexit so that they could get a great trade deal with the US.
Well, he gave that. He gave that as his view in the same way that a couple of years ago, Obama gave it as his view that we were going to be...
Let me finish. Can I finish my question?
Well, can I finish my answer?
No, let him finish his question, and then you can answer all the different questions.
Well,
he basically told the people that Corbyn would be a disaster for the country. Now, my question to you is, was that a coincidence that he called in, or was that a setup? And do you think it's appropriate that he should be taking those sort of actions?
Do I get to answer now?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Well, first of all, as I was trying to say earlier, it is only a couple of years since Obama opined that if Britain voted a certain way in a referendum, that we would then go to the back of the queue. You could interpret that as straightforward blackmail.
Did you criticise that intervention at the time?
I certainly did, because I took that as blackmail.
So therefore you have to criticise Donald Trump.
No, if you won't let me finish, Ian.
Go on.
All right, thank you. It does make a change if people just wait to hear.
Okay.
Right. So what I was saying was that I did criticise that at the time, because that was a form of blackmail. If you don't do this, we'll do this. However, Obama's use of words, and this is why I'm about to talk about Trump in a minute, Obama's use of words was very interesting. Q. Americans don't talk about Qs. You know they don't. They talk about lines. So we all knew that he was put up to that. Now, I think that when... And nobody is going to turn down having the President of the United States on their programme. I mean, would you, if Trump wanted to come on the programme?
No, and maybe I can answer that bit of David's question there, because that interview or that call had been in the offing for, I think, up to 2 years. I don't think I'm betraying any secrets there. So, I mean, it wasn't a set-up call at that time particularly. They've been trying to arrange it for a very long time.
And who would say no to getting
Exactly.
Who would say no? Oh, yeah, that's what I've got to answer.
OK, David, thank you very much. Let's go to Graham in Epsom. Hello, Graham.
Yeah, hi.
Hello.
Hi, Anne.
Hi.
Oh, yeah, we got more in common than I thought, because some of my best friends are gay as well.
Oh, good.
So that's nice.
Let's have a group hug.
Thinking, as a sort of floating voter, I wonder if you could give me just one concrete sort of positive reason for leaving for Brexit, so I could give my tick potentially your way.
Yep. So that Britain can control its own laws, its own borders, its own trade, without any interference from a foreign power. Doesn't that sound good to you?
That's concrete, is it?
Right. Well, it's concrete enough to me. British independence is very concrete, yes.
Well, it seems a bit woolly. I mean, it's nothing...
What's woolly about that?
Well, all of it is just a fluffy answer. It's just absolute nonsense.
Well, I'm sorry you think that, because if you think Britain making its own laws rather than having to make them in accordance with EU law is fluff, then all I can say is you probably should put your cross somewhere else.
Well, I will do. Yeah. Well, thanks for that.
Well, actually, Graham, I hate to tell you this, but in Epsom, you won't have the chance to vote for a Brexit Party candidate because they're not standing in your seat there.
I should have thought of that.
No, I know. I have Mr. Grayling on my territory.
Well, there you go. Right. All right, Graham, thank you very much. Lots of your calls waiting to be answered. We'll get to as many of them as we can in the next half an hour. Ann Widdecombe will be with me until 9. Don't forget, if you want to watch us, you'll get lots of eye rolls from Anne over the next half an hour, I imagine. You can do so on the LBC website, YouTube channel, Facebook page or Twitter feed. It's 8:30 on LBC. Let's get the latest news headlines from Serena Farrow.
Labour's promised to increase public sector pay by 5% as it launched its general election manifesto. Boris Johnson, meantime, says a lack of a clear Brexit plan was the hole at the heart of their manifesto. The Liberal Democrats, who released theirs yesterday, are now focusing on winning over anti-Brexit voters. Alex Salmond said he'll vigorously defend himself over all charges of sexual assault, including an attempted rape claim at his official residence. Scotland's former First Minister's been in court to answer 14 charges involving 10 women. And a man jailed for murdering a woman more than 30 years ago has met the parole board's test for release. That's despite never actually revealing where her body is. Helen McCork disappeared on Merseyside in 1988 when she was 22. LBC weather: showers across much of England and Wales tonight. Some clearer spells in the northwest and Scotland with a low of 2 degrees.
This is LBC.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
The John Lewis & Partners Black Friday event begins tomorrow. There are hundreds of great offers across home, electricals, fashion and nursery in-store and online. So if you're starting Christmas shopping early or you've got your eye on something for yourself, now's the perfect time. Click and collect from any of our shops and also at Waitrose & Partners. Terms and conditions apply. See in-store or online for details.
Money. How does that word make you feel? You might be thinking about what you'd love to spend it on or what you have to spend it on. Maybe you think you're just bad with money, but here's the thing. You're not. You're just with the wrong bank. At Starling Bank, we want you to feel good about money. So we built a personal and business bank account with clever budgeting tools, instant payment alerts, and no fees when you spend overseas. Starling Bank, voted Britain's best bank twice. Download the app today. Smart Money People Awards. Eligibility criteria applies.
Marooned in deep space and no sign of help? Don't panic. And with the AA, the app lets you track the mechanic right to your side.
I'm thinking of joining the AA.
I don't think they accept cats as members.
Who said anything about being a member? I want one of those shiny yellow jackets. Ow!
There are lots of smart reasons to join the AA. You'll get unlimited call-outs, our tap and track app, and we'll get you going again in around 30 minutes of arrival. Switch to a different kind of breakdown service from just £5 a month. Visit theaa.com. New customers only. T's and C's apply.
Some regard me as a national treasure. Well, that's very kind of you, but let me tell you about a hidden national treasure. Cello TVs. Cello are the only British manufacturer of premium quality LED TVs, but without the hefty price tag. 16 to 65 inches, manufactured in the UK, there's a Cello TV for everyone. This Black Friday, get a 65-inch smart 4K TV for under £550. Search cello.tv.
Urine leakage, urine leak.
Tenna Men. Pants and pads. Buy online or in shops. Tenna Men. Keep control.
Leading Britain's conversation. Iain Dale. Tweet at LBC.
It's 8:33. Somebody who's got hashtag FBPE. Do you know what this hashtag is, Anne?
No.
Follow back pro-European. It's a bit culty, to be honest.
Me. Sounds it. Yes.
Let's put sail to far shores. Hashtag FBPE says on Twitter. Help me, people. I've been trapped in a car listening to Iain Dale talk to Ann Widdecombe. I need rum laced with arsenic.
Well, I may need a stiff drink at the end of this interview, but I don't recommend the arsenic to anybody.
Right, we've got lots of calls on the board. Let's go to them now. 0345 6060 973 if you'd like to talk to Ann Widdecombe. Billy is a new caller in Coventry. Hello, Billy.
Hi, Ian. Thank you very much for taking my call. An absolute pleasure.
Hi.
Hi. It was just a very quick one. I've been told by one of the researchers to make it as brief as possible, so I shall try and cram 3.5 years of conversation into as short space as possible. And prior to the referendum, I did an awful lot of maths because I didn't really know a great deal about the EU, but I did an awful lot of research through the Office of National Statistics, through EU websites, etc., 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 and I actually came to the conclusion that we have been, to coin a phrase, if I'm allowed to say it in this day and age, raped for the last 40 years.
Really? Do we have to use that kind of language, Billy? I really think that's inappropriate. I'm not being snowflakey, but really.
Okay, my apologies. Well, we've had over then, should I say?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I absolutely agree with you. I think, we're often told, well, we get all this money from the EU, but of course it's our money in the first place because we're a net contributor. And I do gradually, of course, the whole thing's changed from the original vision. I actually voted in 1975. I voted yes, because I thought we were joining an economic community, a tariff agreement, and I thought this would be very beneficial to us. Wiser people foresaw where it would lead, and it's led there. So I may not agree with your choice of words entirely, but I agree with the sentiment that's behind them. OK, let's move on to Martin in Dunmow. Hello, Martin.
Hi, Ian. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. What would you like to say?
Hello. Could I ask Anne? I've got 2 daughters, and I've had the right to go and live and love and work and retire in Europe. What right has Anne got to take that away from me? But you're not taking it away from them. I mean, I'm ancient enough. Now, hang on. I'm ancient enough to remember before we went in to even the European Economic Community. We could travel. Freedom of movement. Hang on. We could travel in Europe. We could live in Europe. We could work in Europe. I had friends who did. I had friends who did that. So it is a nonsense to suppose that suddenly, because we're leaving the European Union, that we're going to cut off all ties with Europe and that we're not going to travel or live there or work there. That's just not so. But it is true that if I wanted to go and work for a German radio station, it would be much more difficult for me to do so after Brexit than before. Ian, if you want to go and work for any radio station, I doubt you'll have any difficulty at all. All you'll have to do is write your own meal ticket. Well, you can't say that. But, I mean, OK, take me out of it. But you look at anybody who wants to go and work in a European country after Brexit, there will be a lot more paperwork, a lot more bureaucracy, and there will be the right of the other government to say no. Well, this is what is being put. But, yeah, there is the right of the other government to say no. There always was. But this is what people are suggesting, that somehow our relations with Europe are all going to become very, very much harder. In fact, it's in everybody's interests that we keep things flowing. We will still live and work and holiday in each other's countries. And indeed, some ardent leavers live in those countries, or they've got second homes in those countries. But if you want to leave with no deal, those arrangements are going to be very difficult to come to, aren't they? I doubt it. I think very, very quickly. First of all, we'd get a free trade deal very quickly. Barnier himself has said that. First of all, it would take 3 years. First of all, we get a free trade deal. Secondly, a lot is already provided for in the agreements that we've reached. It's very unlikely that we'll just tear everything up and say, right, we're going right back to the drawing board. So, I mean, I just don't see that happening. I am relaxed, and I mean this, I'm genuinely relaxed, that if any of my great-nephews, great-nieces, nephews, nieces want to go and work in Europe, they're going to be able to. Martin? Well, that's of course not true, and you'll have to apply for visas, and it'll be very difficult. The way I see it, Ian, is that we've killed the economic argument. We get 25 times more out in free trade than we put in. We've killed the sovereignty argument. Parliament's shown us that over the last few months. And I'm sorry to say it, I don't want to be offensive, but it all boils down to a bit of racism. That's
a bit of racism?
I can't see
anything else. How do you work that out?
Well, you just don't. It's people who, with Farage, it's people who don't like foreigners.
This is Widdecombe. Are you telling me I don't like foreigners? You telling me I don't like foreigners?
Well, the way you
are you telling me that? Are you telling me that?
You certainly don't like foreigners.
Well, that, if I may say, is a complete nonsense. What I don't like is the institution of the EU, its excessive power, and the way that it meddles in our affairs. That is the EU.
How?
That is, sorry.
What laws are you looking forward to not having one?
Oh, well, let me just give you a very recent example, recent-ish, when we were altering the retirement age for women. And David Cameron, yet again, and all governments had done it, decided that it had to be accelerated. And his proposals, nevertheless, tried to delay the rise for women just a little, but that would involve a temporary imbalance with the men. The EU said he couldn't do that. When I was a minister, I would propose things. You can't do that, minister. It's incompatible with EU law. Sometimes we actually had to fight them very hard because they simply didn't understand our systems. It is true. I personally experienced it. Oh.
We have control of what we have on
you're uttering libel. Because I am not lying.
I mean, so far, Martin, you've rather disgraced yourself by calling Ann Widdecombe. You've called Ann Widdecombe a racist and a liar. Would you like to add to the offensiveness of your call?
Well, she's saying that we don't have control of when we set retirement ages, and that's a nonsense. It's being discussed right now. The government put in for 66 for women, and all the women are saying now that that's unfair because they contribute to national insurance contributions.
That's quite true, but what you don't seem to understand is, listen, because you can check this. You can check this. David Cameron actually wanted a longer timetable for women, and we could not do it under EU law. Go and check it before you call me a liar.
OK, Martin, thank you. Let's sort of calm things down with the language here.
Oh, shall we? Yes.
I think we should, because it's not really right that people come on the radio and accuse other people that they've probably never met, only know by reputation, of being a liar or a racist. I think we should just calm things down a bit.
Just let me ask you one thing. You've known me for 20 years. Do you think I'm a racist?
No,
and a liar?
I don't.
No,
I wouldn't want you as a friend if I did.
Didn't you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Before this gets all too cosy, Jenny is in Rustington in Sussex. Hello, Jenny.
Oh yes, hello. Good evening.
Hi, Jenny.
And the amazing Wonder Woman, Anne. You are just wonderful.
Well, I don't know about that.
Well, you always say it how it is, and that's just fantastic because nowadays there is so much untruth about what is produced for us to digest. I wanted to know, the Brexit Party in the future, obviously, one assumes, will be into local elections down the line once we've got rid of Brexit and we are free. Is that right? Are you going to carry on as, producing candidates for both future general elections and local elections?
Well, of course, I mean, we are about much more than just Brexit, although Brexit is the driving force and we want Brexit, and that is our first and foremost policy. But of course, we've also said, already announced, a huge package for the regions because we think that they're being left behind. We've also announced the abolition of business rates for high street shops, which we will have to pay for by levying a small online sales tax. So we've got lots of things we want to do. And you're quite right. Eventually, of course, if that grows, then we shall become involved in local elections. But one thing at a time. And at the moment, we're fighting a general election and we're not fighting it from a position of being the front runner. So let's concentrate on that.
But if Brexit actually does happen, I mean, say we leave on January the 31st and let's say we get a free trade deal by December the 31st, 2020, isn't the Brexit Party going to shut up shop?
I don't think we will, because, I mean, one of the things... I'm not able to predict exactly what's going to happen, but one of the things we've said is we want to clean up politics. I mean, I think the one thing that does unite possibly both Leavers and Remainers has been the sheer disbelief and I'm talking about people outside Parliament now, the sheer disbelief at the antics and shenanigans that have gone on in Parliament over the last 3.5 years. And we want to clean that up. I, for example, would like a lot more honesty, and I have been just a little bit horrified, just a little bit, because I'm so used to it, but I am still nevertheless a bit horrified at the sheer spending war that we've now got going on between the two major parties. Well, if Boris could spend all that, why didn't he do it before? Why do politicians quite suddenly, with an election on, forget that they've got to be prudent, that they've got to be austere, that they've got to be this, they've got to be that, they've got to be responsible? Suddenly it's a spending war. Heaven help us. Now let's try and clean up some of that.
OK, Jenny, thank you for your question. Let's go to Ian, who's a new caller in Rainford on Merseyside. Hello, Ian.
Hi, good evening, Ian. Good evening, Anne.
Hi.
Hi. You keep saying, Anne, and it's one of the things that I've kept hearing over and over again, is that we can't make our own laws because of the EU, and it's something that a previous caller's just asked. Let's say we left on the 31st of January and we're out. What one thing would you change straight away that we cannot do now that is going to vastly enhance my life for the better?
Well, I don't know what will enhance your life for the better unless you tell me, but what I do know is that from that date, we will be free. And one thing I must make quite clear, I think everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of people imagine that the instant we leave, somehow all the bureaucracy that we've suffered over the years is going to disappear. It will have to be a very gradual business of repeal and introducing new things. No, hang on. I'm trying to give you the responsible answer, which is there isn't going to be a magic wand on January the 31st. But what we will be able to do from then on is to set up trade deals, which we can't at the moment, and they will take a while to set up. You won't get them on February the 1st. And what we can do is look at all the regulation which we have got from the EU. For example, let me give you one. Fishermen's nets, which you may think is a bit esoteric. But actually, I've got fishermen in the constituency in which I'm standing who have, and indeed throughout the southwest, which I already represent as an MEP, who are facing a massive drop in their income because the EU has prescribed new net sizes through which some of their catch is just going to disappear.
And if you don't mind, if I could just interrupt and just have sort of 20 seconds there.
Yeah.
Fishing makes up such a tiny, tiny proportion of the GDP of this country. It's pathetic that the Brexit Party continually bang on about fishing
we do.
When your leader...
No control over our own waters.
In 10 years. What about the finances? What about the banking industry? What about the technology industry that is going to be gutted and destroyed by Brexit?
Ian?
My question, in fairness, was what one thing is going to enhance my life by leaving the EU and being able to make our own laws?
What job do you do, Ian?
I work for myself. I'm self-employed as a financial advisor. I have a good standard of living. I'm comfortable. I've never known my life in any other way than being within the EU.
Okay, well,
I don't see a single benefit to me or my family to leaving the EU. And I'd like Anne to tell me.
Well, give him one benefit.
Well, I mean, I've already given 3 benefits several times.
Well, the fishing nets doesn't benefit him, does it?
I'm not talking about that. I said I've already given 3 benefits that we can make our own laws. We can repeal such laws.
But what law would you like to make that we can't do now?
I'm jolly going to finish the sentence. Which is that we can make our own laws, we can control our own borders, and we also can do our own trade deals. Now, those to me are such big benefits that they absolutely overarch everything. But if you want a little one, well, I've already mentioned it once tonight. High street shops, for example, gradually going under. People suffer when the high street shops disappear.
How has the EU contributed to that?
And what we're saying is that we will, I'm just telling you what the Brexit Party is going to do, that we are going to abolish the business rates that cause them such problems.
But we could do that in the EU as well.
Well, actually, yes, we could do that within the EU, but there are a lot of financial things that we can't do.
All he's asking is something that a new law that you want to bring in that we couldn't at the moment that will affect Ian's life for the better.
Well, all I can say is, Ian, that there are many things that we can do, but if you want me to give you one snap law that's going to benefit you, then all I can say is, if you won't benefit from an independent Britain, if all you're concerned about is your desk and your revenues, sorry, I can't help you.
OK, Iain, thank you very much. More of your calls in a second. I've got a couple of spaces on the board now. 0345 6060973. It's 8:48.
Eddie Mayer, Monday to Friday from 4 p.m.
I went to the local A&E and extremely busy. And I asked them how typical that was, and they said, well, that's quite normal. They all worked long hours. One I remember said she worked an 11-hour shift every day. And I said, well, what about a break? What do you do? She said, well, we're entitled to an hour, but I tend to grab a sandwich and just eat it here, and then I can see more people.
Eddie Mayer, Monday to Friday from 4 p.m. LBC.
If you're collecting your prescription, don't assume you can claim it for free. Not all benefits entitle you to free prescriptions. And if you claim when you're not entitled, you could face a penalty charge of up to £100. Thankfully, there's a simple way to find out if you should be paying. Search Check Before You Tick online and use our eligibility checker to find out if your benefits mean you can claim for free. Or you can ask your pharmacy team. So always remember to check before you tick. This was brought to you by the NHS.
Some regard me as a national treasure. Well, that's very kind of you, but let me tell you about a hidden national treasure. Cello TVs. Cello are the only British manufacturer of premium quality LED TVs, but without the hefty price tag. 16 to 65 inches, manufactured in the UK, there's a Cello TV for everyone. This Black Friday, get a 65-inch smart 4K TV for under £550. Search cello.tv.
If you're looking for a used car, you're about to hit the big time. Don't miss the Big Motoring World Black Friday event with big reductions, big savings, and a big range of over 3,000 used cars to choose from. Get yourself down to the Big Motoring World Black Friday event. Go to bigmotoringworld.co.uk. Find them at Bluebell Hill, West Malling, and Stratford, just by Westfield.
This week at Lidl, we're big on our Big Toys event, with Paw Patrol and PJ Mask sets from $39.99, Frozen toys from $12.99, Playmobil sets from $9.99, and loads more in store from Thursday the 21st of November. Now that's big on quality and always Lidl on price. Subject to availability, selected stores, excludes NI.
Marooned in deep space and no sign of help? Don't panic. And with the AA, the app lets you track the mechanic right to your side.
I'm thinking of joining the AA.
I don't think they accept cats as members.
Who said anything about being a member? I want one of those shiny yellow jackets. Ow!
There are lots of smart reasons to join the AA. You'll get unlimited call-outs, our tap and track app, and we'll get you going again in around 30 minutes of arrival. Switch to a different kind of breakdown service from just £5 a month. Visit theaa.com. New customers only. T's and C's apply.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
Iain Dale on LBC.
It's 8:51 on LBC. Will in Cheltenham says, in over 5 years of listening to LBC, Ann Widdecombe saying, "I'm jolly going to finish this sentence" is my absolute highlight. All I can say is we must have had some pretty rubbish programmes if that's your highlight. Right, let's go back to the questions. If you've just tuned in, Ann Widdecombe has been with me since 8 o'clock. You can catch up after 9 o'clock if you've missed any of this on the YouTube channel. You can watch it all, or it'll be on the Cross Question podcast a little bit later as well. Right, let's go to Sylvie, who's in Hemel Hempstead. Hello, Sylvie.
Hello, good evening, Iain. Good evening, Anne.
Good evening, Sylvie.
Now, my question. I am a passionate Brexiteer.
Good.
And was always an admirer of yours, mostly because you used to speak up for animals.
Yes.
My other passionate subject.
Yes.
The question is, where on the Brexit Party website are your policies on animal welfare? Because I cannot see one word about it.
Well, you won't see one word about a lot of things because we're publishing the range of policies as opposed to one or two that we've already done tomorrow. But let me give you one very good example. You will be aware that there are live exports between us and the EU.
And the Tory party's policy is to ban those.
And our policy also is that once we've left the EU, we will be able to ban them.
which the Tory party's policy is as well. So it's a wonderful policy.
What else do you want from the Brexit Party then?
Well, I was just wondering what would be... I didn't realise the manifesto was coming out tomorrow. But,
we're not calling it a manifesto. We think a manifesto has become synonymous with a load of lies. So we're calling it a contract with the people.
And who's written this
Jolly
manifesto?
Good. Well, on your website are a lot of policy statements.
Yes.
But nothing on animal welfare.
Right.
I'm delighted to hear that is your policy. Do you have any other policy contracts with the people, or let's say contracts with animals, that you're going to be announcing?
Well, I'm afraid I am going to have to ask you to wait until tomorrow because, tomorrow is when we're doing the launch. And unlike Boris, I don't leak things in advance.
And who's written the manifesto?
The manifesto has been written by a large number of us putting in from our own areas of expertise. For example, we have Dr. David Bull, who's a GP practicing. He's made a huge input on health. I've been able to put an input on law and order. So those of us who have experience, direct experience, particular areas, have all contributed policy ideas.
OK. Sylvie, thank you. Let's go to Steve in Sutton. Hello, Steve.
Hi, Ian. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Enjoying this hour. What would you like to say?
I would like to ask Anne, if I may, please, who would be Prime Minister if the Brexit Party were to win the general election?
Oh, no, that's a good one.
Well, first of all, we cannot win the general election for the simple reason we aren't putting out enough candidates to do that. What we hope to do is to hold the balance of power and to get Brexit MPs into Parliament. So we won't actually be in a position to send somebody into number 10. Sorry about that.
Well, if you won all, was it 200 and something seats?
74.
274, you could have a Brexit Prime Minister in a hung Parliament.
But you know that we are not going to win.
I know, but let's play a bit of fantasy politics.
I'm playing devil's advocate a bit here, I have to be honest.
Well, I mean, as I'm saying to you, we are not expecting to be nominating a Prime Minister, so I cannot answer your question because we have no policy on that.
I suppose that's a fair answer.
And it would depend who was in as well, who won their seats, who got in. That would have to be.
You would have to have a leader of your parliamentary group. Is that is that a position that appeals?
I'm sure it would appeal to a lot of our candidates.
Would it appeal to you?
It might do, but as I say, it depends who gets in.
Commit some news. Would it appeal to you?
Commit some news. I hate committing news.
Well, you do it quite well. But no, I mean, seriously, you're an experienced parliamentarian, more experienced than virtually anyone else that's likely to get elected.
With direct experience of Parliament, that may be true. Yes, well, the party in Parliament would have to decide those things when it happens.
I look forward to the day, maybe, when you are asking questions to Prime Minister Johnson or possibly Prime Minister Corbyn.
If it's Prime Minister Corbyn, I'm emigrating.
To where?
Back home to Dartmoor.
That's not emigrating.
No, I know. Perhaps I'd lift up Dartmoor and put it down somewhere else.
You might have visa problems if you want to go anywhere in the EU.
No visa problems.
OK. Julie is a new caller in Hammersmith. Hello, Julie.
Yeah, hello. My name is Julie. I would like to ask Anne, I'm a big fan of yours. And I like the way the show is very entertaining. I like the way you're not letting Iain get away with it.
I'm used to it, Julie.
I've known him a long time.
Anyway, I would like to ask about the rights of the non-EU immigrants who are living in this country.
Did you say?
What would you do differently?
Sorry, did you say EU or non-EU?
Non-EU.
Non-EU.
Would you reverse the hostile environment from Theresa May?
Well, the hostile, to be fair, I'm not an admirer of Theresa May, but to be fair, she didn't talk about a hostile attitude towards immigration. She talked about a hostile attitude towards illegal immigration. And I do think that is something that we need to get on top of because it's still rife and particularly the asylum system is abused. But people who are here perfectly lawfully, their position is not going to change. But what will change would be the conditions that we place on people coming in for the first time. We'll particularly be looking for skills where we have shortages. But, and this is something that Nigel Farage made very clear the other day, it is all very well going on importing skills from countries that themselves desperately need them. What we need to be doing is skilling our own workforce. And that is something that politicians have been paying lip service to for a long time, something we actually need to get on top of.
Julie, thank you very much. I did ask Nigel Farage the other day in a private moment how he was getting on with you. What do you think his reaction was?
Well, if it was a private moment, I'm not sure you should be telling me.
Oh, he won't mind.
Oh, well, then tell me.
He said, I'm bloody terrified of her.
That's not true. That's not true. That really isn't.
How do you get on with him? Because you are, I mean, you are, aren't you? And you are not two people who I would imagine that in normal life would get on.
Oh, we do get on. I mean, we do get on. We both got a sense of humour. And we have shared political objectives in common. So, yes, we do get on.
Well, Anne, it's been a roller coaster of an hour. Thank you very much indeed.
Good heavens, is it over?
It is over. A lot of people are suggesting that we should carry it on, but I'm afraid we do.
The law says you can't.
Well, the law says we have to talk about the Labour Party manifesto for the next hour, so that's what we're going to do. If you would like to catch up on this later, it's on the Cross Question podcast from about 10, and also it'll be available right now on the LBC YouTube channel. Anne, thank you very much indeed. I should tell you that the other candidates in Anne's seat, Plymouth, Sutton and Devonport, are James Elwood from the Green Party, Luke Pollard from Labour, Graham Reid from the Liberal Democrats and Rebecca Smith from the Conservative Party. Coming up in the next hour, I'm going to ask you what you think of all these different eye-catching policies that have been announced today in the Labour Party manifesto. Jeremy Corbyn says it's the most radical manifesto ever published. Others say it's the most extreme left-wing manifesto ever published. How's it going to be paid for? We're going to have free rein in this hour. I'm not going to highlight on one particular policy because I want to hear what you think of it more generally. I'll tell you what the main policies are, and then you tell me if it makes you more likely to vote Labour or less likely. The lines are open now, 0345 6060 973.